Well, hi everybody. Welcome to the MenoLounge. I'm Julie Gordon-White, CEO of MenoWell, Menopause, Energy, and Protein Bars. How are you today? I have to say, before we jump in with our amazing guest, we're talking about menopause and metabolism. I have to share, hey, Coach Angela, just a moment, a proud mama moment. And no, not my kids. I love my kids, but we did a survey with all of our customers about why they love MenoWell bars and why they eat them, why they buy them. And you know what they said? They told us that they loved how the high fiber protein helped control their cravings. You know what? That's exactly why I started MenoWell bars, because I was struggling with my cravings. So I just wanted to share that. They love the taste. They love the clean ingredients, of course. Here's one other thing that actually I might even be more proud of. That eating a MenoWell bar signaled to themselves that they did something good for their own body. Like self-care every day. Made my day. So thanks for letting me share. I love it. I love it. I love it. So let's jump into menopause and metabolism with Dr. Betty Murray. Let's see, Dr. Betty. I know you must be out here somewhere. Let's see. I'm going to see if I can find you. You guys get your questions ready, and you're going to be able to ask Dr. Betty. She knows a lot of stuff. Here we go. Is in Dallas, and she's the founder of the Dallas Live Well Health and Wellness Center. Here she comes. Hi, Dr. Betty.
Hi.
How are you? I was getting ready to brag on all your things. So, founder of the Dallas Live Well Health and Wellness Center, founder of Menrva, which is a menopause telemedicine company, podcaster. You do all kinds of things. You have a nonprofit. I don't know when you sleep. Maybe you don't sleep, but
Not a lot.
not a
No,
lot.
actually I do. I get 8 hours a night, but
Good answer.
I say I compartmentalize very, very well, you know.
I love it. I love it. Well, I knew you had a lot of energy. We met at South by Southwest, which we were there with at Flow Space's great She Media Day with all the amazing menopause speakers. And I saw you and I'm like, oh, okay. We were talking and you were in that great red suit. Like, oh, she's my person. So have to have you on the MenoLounge. So super excited that you're here, and we're going to be talking about menopause and metabolism and all the other things that you are really amazing at. But I want to jump right in. I heard you say on your website actually a video about the battle cry that we are in right now. So can you give us a little color around that?
So funny. I was at an event this weekend and we had a really long conversation about kind of the battle cry. For as long as we can really, go back in time when we look at medicine has always been really designed around men. So if you look through a medical school book, like 99% of the images are male bodies, or they have just kind of like, oh, here's all the body. Oh, by the way, here's the females. And I think as a matter of fact, it was only a few years ago that we actually had somebody really actually diagram the entire clitoris. So I'm going to go ahead and get a sexual word out there, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's a body part, but yet we have never bothered to identify the full body part. And so women, particularly, boomer women, so women that are a little bit older than I am, I'm Gen X, have paid the price for poor science, and we see this incredible tidal wave of chronic disease. And then you kind of look forward, and what's going on right now in the United States and other places, we are losing ground and we're losing body autonomy. So I'm not only driven to do what I'm doing to help women feel better and actually advance science and medicine, but to me, this is a moral imperative and a women's rights imperative. Snap, 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 snap. Because if we don't, like a lot of people, we all feel this way, and this is what I was talking about this week. And we all feel this way, like somebody needs to do something about it. Somebody needs to do something about it. And I'm like, that somebody is obviously got to be me. So I was like,
We all
because
need to do something,
we
like
all
whatever
do.
our part is in this. Yeah, I agree. Keep going.
Yeah. So as somebody asked me, they were like, what was your catalyst to get behind this weekend? And I came home and I asked my husband, because most of us, like, we're menopausal, so we may not remember all our stories. And he's my elephant, remembers all my stories. And he's like, Betty, I don't think you have one particular thing. He
Mm,
said it was probably the overturning of Roe v. Wade and what that really did, because, and I can talk about that not from a right or left side, but just what does it do legally and for healthcare, because a lot of undetermined
mm,
things. But it was, what I said is it's a series of paper cuts.
mm,
You have a little paper cut and you're like,
mm,
oh, and then you
mm.
pick up the envelope again and you're like, oh, that hurts. And then
Right,
after the 30th paper cut, it's like, I can't do that anymore.
right, right.
You know?
That's like that death by 1,000 paper cuts statement. Yeah,
Yes.
and the thing is, we didn't even know, as women, we didn't even know that studies were only on men and that
No.
they didn't even apply to us. They would just take this study that had nothing to do with our bodies and apply, or some things, but not specific parts that men don't even have. So really
Right.
frustrating,
It's really, really
really frustrating.
frustrating. And, I think I look at it now like it's our own health that we're going to pay for, but we've got, daughters and granddaughters and our granddaughters, you know what I mean? We have this legacy that we have to leave. And I think the most important thing is 6,000 women a day go into menopause in the United States,
Right.
right? We are a tidal wave, 50 million, right? We are a tidal wave. And the one thing that we have that they forget is we've got assets in many cases because we've been working for a long time. We have the ability and the aptitude, and then we also have, I would say the assets and strength to really do something major about it, because we have this ability to step into the arena, because most of us, our kids are grown or darn close to grown. We can step into the arena and actually really go after leaving an impact
Hmm.
because of where we are in this time period. Women
I
of
agree.
this age are actually going to change the world.
I agree. I agree. I agree. Because the things I do now, the time I spend now, I was not able to do when I was raising my three kids.
Yeah.
It was more in between, just different, and just who we are. In our 50s. I'm going to be 60 in a week and a half. Like who that confidence that comes with that we didn't have before. So we need to bring all of that to the table. So I love what you're saying. So let me just go under the cover here a minute. So you used to have a corporate career. You're kind of like me. You had that business career, and then you got a bug, but you became a functional doctor. So tell us about that. How did you make that switch, and why did you decide to do that?
Yep, yep. So I'm a PhD, just so I clarify that anybody's that's watching. I'm a PhD. So I tell everybody I'm the thinking side of medicine. Not that MDs and DOs do not, but my job is to really, really dig in and understand the science at a very in-depth level.
Mm.
But my original career, I've had three separate careers. I came out of college. I wanted to go to med school, but you'll find this amusing. At the time I liked business and I liked medicine, but I thought, because I was working full time to go to school full time, I was really thinking like, do I want to be in school 12 years?
Mm.
It's the 80s, And so I
Mm-hmm.
was like, I'll come out with a business degree. I'll decide what I'm going to do. And so I end up in sales and marketing and I actually get swept into the technology boom. And in the early 90s, so we're talking dial-up days, the whole nine yards. And
Right. I
I have
remember
an
it.
aptitude for anything difficult to understand. And so I was like, oh, I could do this. So I go get a bunch of certifications, get really knowledgeable, and end up getting hired to work for the CTO of a company. And I'm the first female hired in an all male, very, very, very misogynistic environment. And I'm
Mm.
working, 80 hours a week, much like most women, working twice as much as my male counterparts, making half as much with more
Yeah.
responsibility. And while I worked there, I was diagnosed with colitis.
Mm.
And I asked what I thought was a legit question: could I change my diet? And this very overweight male doctor laughed in my face and said it had nothing to do with what I ate.
Wow.
I was like, that's so interesting. Because if I don't
Hmm.
eat, I start to feel better, but I can't do
Right.
that long term. And
Right.
so I had already started yoga and all this other stuff. And so I kind of went down the road. I was just going to take nutrition classes to understand my own health. And that's when it clicked. So I went back to get my master's and a CN, and then, hung my shingle and started my practice. And then when I hit my late 30s, like 38, 39, I'd had a tubal because I didn't want to be on the pill anymore. And I think a lot of people can, understand
Yeah.
that.
Guilty.
And as soon as I had that tubal, it was like everything went awry.
Mm.
And I had access at this point. I'd opened my clinic. I was very well equipped in the functional medicine community. And everybody I talked to was a different hormone problem. It was this, it was that, it was this, or you're estrogen dominant, da, 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 da. And no matter what we tried, I didn't feel any better.
Mm,
And, and so to say my 40s sucked would have been nice. So they were not
mm,
great,
yeah.
despite having access to the best minds. Really, honestly, I was very, very immersed. And so that's what prompted me to go back and get another master's and a PhD,
You're
basically
that
because
person. Like, I have a problem. I'm curious. Let me go get a master's degree.
right, right. And so my second master's and PhD is in integrative and functional nutrition from a school of medicine and science. And then it's really for anybody that's like, what is that? It's systems biology. It's how do all of our body systems have shared mechanisms?
Right.
Yeah, it's all shared. And so in that I studied women's hormone metabolism heavily, right? Because
Mm,
that was where I felt everything was really happening. I was able to turn my health around. So I feel better. I look completely different than I did at
mm,
45,
mm,
and I'm
mm.
healthier by all accounts than I was at 40.
Wow.
And I'm 55 right now. And so what it really told me, it's not just applying hormones. I mean, I think it's great that we have a lot of people out there prescribing hormones, but there's a lot more to getting the body into
Mhm,
balance than just throwing hormones at somebody with hot flashes. But I think that there's an opportunity here for women to not accept that the next third of their life is going to be a downhill slope.
mhm.
You know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And if anything, it can be not even an uphill climb, right? It can just be a great ride, and we've
Yeah.
earned it. So let's optimize so we can feel better in that
Exactly.
journey. Because I think I heard you say it. I know I've said it too. We want to live a long time, but we want to live well during that time frame and feel good, not just live to live.
Yeah.
So all these things. Okay, let's talk about metabolism because I think we often think of metabolism as weight loss. Okay, weight loss. I need to make sure,
Mhm.
my metabolism doesn't go away. Let's talk about defining metabolism and how that actually is a whole part of system of the body. It's not just about weight management.
Yeah, yeah. So metabolism, at the very essence of metabolism, yes, it has a lot to do with, whether you lose weight or gain weight or whether you have energy or not. But metabolism actually happens inside every single cell in your body. And you have two opportunities to actually metabolically use either fat or sugar in the form of glucose in your cells. And one of them is your powerhouse called your mitochondria. And the other one is out, I call it the campfire. There's a little campfire outside the powerhouse, it's an area called the cytosol. And how much you use the powerhouse relative to the campfire makes a difference on how well your energy is in all parts of your body. So whether you're able to think, whether you have fatigue or not, whether you gain weight or lose weight, muscle strength, all of those things are dependent on the actions of the individual cell. And what I found when I was looking in my research was there's an extraordinary amount of changes in our cell when we go through menopause.
Mm,
And so, no, it's not calories in, calories out. And no, it is 100% different between men and women. And still to this day, it gets buried and no one really talks about those internal
mm,
mechanisms. And women pay the price because everybody tells them, oh, you're just lazy, you're not following, oh, you must be missing the boat, you're eating more than you think you are, you're not exercising appropriately, or you're exercising too much, all
mhm.
these things that we get told, and we have cellular changes that happen because of the menopause transition.
Okay, so let's stay in that lane then. So if we're talking, okay, and so now we are talking about weight management for a minute here. So we know calories matter,
Yes.
but as our metabolism, our metabolic health changes, then our cells are changing as well, and that impacts. So just straight the simple calories in, calories out isn't the entire picture, right? So how do women account for the entire picture, but also pay attention to calories in, calories out?
Yeah. Yeah, so calories do count. It's not that they don't count, but a lot of it depends on the hormonal message that happens depending on your food, right? So, like
Mm-hmm.
for instance, insulin controls the transport of glucose. Insulin is a
Right.
hormone. I think the most important part that people need to understand is so when we have full estrogen levels, once we hit puberty and we have really good, consistent estrogen levels relative to our other sex hormones, testosterone and progesterone, we actually have a cellular boost that actually keeps us leaner. and actually changes the distribution of our body fat. So if we get something, I call it junk in the trunk. It's the stuff we get in our hips and thighs and booty,
The
right?
trunk
But
is okay. It's just when it's like in the suitcase
belly.
in the front, the tire, that's not okay.
Yeah, yeah. And a lot of people will say it's like my butt creeped around and came on the front. So what's really happening there is the loss of estrogen. At the very minimum, we lose estrogen, our body has chronic low grade inflammation. Regardless of how hard you are working on your inflammation, the act of being low in estrogen drives inflammation. If you are inflamed, your insulin sensitivity and your ability to use sugar and fat become impaired. Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's why we gain weight around the abdomen. Almost always we see a small change, if not a significant change in weight gain around the abdomen.
Right.
And that's not the jiggly bits. That's not the stuff that you see that you don't
No.
like, the little fluffy belly fat on the belly. What's really happening is it's actually infiltrating around your organs. It's called visceral fat.
Visceral fat. Yeah.
And that's
And
more
that's the
inflammatory.
dangerous kind also, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So that is an uphill battle because when we're inflamed, we become less metabolically active. Now, here's the thing that no one talks about. So everybody's probably heard, and if you haven't, so glucose is in the bloodstream. It gets picked up by insulin, kind of like a taxi cab, and insulin takes it and drops it off at the cell wall and then pushes it through the door of the cell, right? And says, get in there and do your job. Now, insulin is inside the cell. It hasn't been, or not insulin, sorry, glucose is inside the cell. It hasn't done anything yet. It has a transporter that is a slow, what they call a passive transport called GLUT4. So think of that as this I like to think of it as a ladder, or not a ladder, but a slide. Some slides are really, really steep. This one is almost level, right? Like very
Not
slow.
bad.
So what happens is glucose is pushed by estrogen down that slide. So when we lose estrogen, it's kind of oozing
I was
down
going
the
to say
slide.
it's not going as quickly anymore, is it? Yeah.
No, so at a minimum, our estrogen transport efforts with GLUT4 become very slow.
Mm-hmm.
So that means you get less fuel in your powerhouses. And this is everywhere: brain, muscles, organs, everything, skin. The other thing that happens is when it gets in the powerhouse, estrogen has a powerful effect on the ability for it to actually produce energy. There was some really good studies looking at particularly cognition and the impact of estrogen on the mitochondria, the powerhouse of the brain. And I'm sorry, I need to break it to you. If it happens in a mitochondria in the brain, it happens in all mitochondria. So here's the take-home message. Your fuel is on a slow roll to your powerhouse, and your powerhouse is running at half
Mm-hmm.
steam, right?
Exactly.
And you're getting more inflamed. The other thing no one talks to you about is we have nerves that goes to our fat cells on our subcutaneous fat. They're adrenal nerves,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so they're stimulated by
Receptors.
adrenaline and
Yeah.
norepinephrine.
Mm-hmm.
Those go to sleep on our subcutaneous fat when we lose estrogen. So the things that tell your body to mobilize fat out of the fat cells, particularly on the hips and thighs and abdomen, go to sleep. So we have all of these things that lead to this much more difficult process to use the same dietary and lifestyle things we may have done at 30 at 50, because we have all this hormonal imbalance that's happening, that the body, yes, it's a natural process, but living past 50 something is not natural to us.
Mm-hmm.
Not.
Exactly. But we
Yes.
do. So the reason this is why we need to figure out how to live better, like high quality of life, because we're still here. We are not done.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
all right. Woo, there was so much in there, all the good stuff. All right. So I do want to touch on protein and fiber, which seems so trivial, actually, based on what we just talked about. But it's what we can control, part of what we can control and putting in our body. And while calories in, calories out don't have the exact same impact, I'm bullish on macros.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on protein and fiber, plus all the yummy veggies, like all that good stuff, right?
Yeah.
As levers to help move things along, to stoke that metabolic system, to help get glucose, the right things into our powerhouse, into our mitochondria. What do you think about
Yes.
protein and fiber?
So I want to touch on something really quickly, and then I'm going to talk about those macros. So
Okay.
the other thing that people need to know is our first organ to become insulin resistant, right? So the first one that sort of ignores the taxi cab for glucose is your skeletal muscle. So that's your legs, your hips, your buns, your arms, your abdominal muscles. They go insulin resistant
Mm.
first. And when they do that, they're not good at using glucose, and they're also not good at using fat for fuel, right? Because if
Okay.
insulin's high, fat doesn't get burned because they have to act like a seesaw. Protein is absolutely required as a dietary intake. Whether somebody's vegan, vegetarian, or omnivore, we have to get amino acids. They are essential. So we have to get protein in our diet. There are certain proteins, the branch chain amino acids, but particularly methionine, lysine, and leucine are extremely important to muscle development and the body. Which are often found in animal proteins. So we have a minimum amount that we need when we're younger, right, to hold muscle mass. There were some really good studies that came out in 2023 that looked at our ability to build muscle between young people and people our age. Young people can eat a little tiny bit of protein here, a little bit of protein there, a little bit of protein there, 10, 20 here and there. And their body just makes muscle. It's called muscle protein synthesis.
Right.
Well, lo and behold, they found that older people, and particularly older women, we aren't good at it. So
Right.
if we give just a little tiny bit, our body just stores
Mhm.
it. It goes, cool, I'm going to go convert this. I'm going to convert it often to glucose, or I'm going to store it as fat. Or we just don't use it to make muscle, right? So we need to get protein in, and we actually need larger chunks of protein in the morning and larger chunks of protein at night. I had to change everything I told people because I was
About
like,
intermittent fasting.
well, not even
Yes.
so much, no, not so much intermittent fasting, but when you eat your protein and how much you should eat.
Mm.
I'm actually having people try and get 50 to 60 in the morning and around, and 50 to 60 in the
Mm.
evening if they can, and if they can't get there, that leaves the afternoon, the middle, because that's what they showed is if we gave a big chunk at breakfast and dinner, we had better muscle protein synthesis, which means able to make muscle.
Mm.
The other,
So protein loading early and later. Yeah,
yes,
interesting because I've heard two schools of thought, like no, have it continuous, make sure you have your 30 grams of protein, throughout the day. But I tend to like to load it in the morning because just as insurance.
that, well, yeah,
um,
exactly.
so because sometimes or at lunchtime I'm busy, I might just have a little bit of cottage cheese and a MenoWell bar and that's it because
Yes,
I'm doing too many things. Or in the evening, I'm not that hungry usually, especially if I've done a good job with my protein during the day.
right.
So I like to load up, with all the things, get my 50 grams in the morning, but I didn't know that I was really supposed to do
Yeah,
that.
I mean, this is, all the way up until this study coming out, I would have, agreed because all the science had shown, hey, do 30, 30, 30, and then if you get a little bit on a snack, cool. But they had never looked at the active muscle protein synthesis in age groups. And
Mhm.
so this was, I was like, oh, wow. So yeah, I always front loaded just like you did, but I'm like, now you must. The
Nice.
other thing that we have to remember is if somebody's been struggling, let's say they've been overweight for a long time. Let's say the struggle is real. The other thing is your body can convert protein to sugar in the liver. It's a process called gluconeogenesis.
Mm.
And the other thing we have to make sure, because I have a lot of women that come to our clinic and they'll say, I'm getting my protein in. I'm getting, 90 to 100 to 120 grams a day, and I'm eating low carb. And we don't think they're lying. I'm sure they're not lying, and they're unable to lose weight. And what is possibly happening there, we don't have good research. We know that it happens, but we don't have good research on menopausal women, is we can get what they call abnormal amino acid metabolism. So what that means is instead of the body taking it to the muscle cells and using it, it converts it to glucose inside the liver,
Mm.
preferentially. So the other thing that I tell people to do is if we're trying to build muscle, which we should 100% be doing for longevity and bone,
Bone
and if,
density. Yeah.
yeah, and if we're trying to help our metabolism, we need to move those big skeletal muscles, the legs, the butt, the hips, the thighs. We need to get moving.
Mhm.
We need to lift heavy crap and we need to get moving and move our
Because
body
we're
and we need
telling
both.
our body, hey, I need that protein for the muscle. So
Yes.
then it's going to shuttle it to where it needs to go.
Yes.
So I'm with that. You know what I do? I love squats.
Yes.
And because I'm always looking like, where's the leverage? I need the bang for my buck. Got to
Oh,
move those big
sure.
muscles and doing squats with your toes up a little bit. Health coach Angela's here. She's
Yeah.
going to check me on this. I know it. You know, getting in those squats that also get the glutes. I try to do 25 like in the morning and then at lunchtime. So I get in 100 throughout the day,
Yeah.
just getting those in, keeping my quads and glutes active. And so that's a way to make sure that I'm telling my body, hey, protein goes there, not
Yes.
someone else. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So, you know, what's interesting about that? So, older studies looked at walking after meals, right? So taking like let's say a 20-minute
Right.
casual, I'm not talking speed walking, that will lower your post-eating blood sugar by half.
Mm-hmm.
Just air squats like that 20 to 33 times, but after meals will do the same
I
thing.
saw that.
So you,
Dr. Rhonda
yeah,
Patrick was talking about that, right? Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
like you don't have to do crazy stuff, but what you need is you need to tell the muscles to dispose of the
Mm-hmm.
sugar, use it, and
Mm-hmm.
then they will build muscle and use it properly. So sitting on the couch and getting 150 grams of protein may backfire if you've been overweight for a long time. This doesn't happen to people who have always been body weight normative. It's
Yeah,
only if somebody's been overweight and obese for a significant period of time, and no one talks about
yeah.
that. And there's
But
lots
it's
of
still
studies.
better though, even if they are not losing weight, having that amount of protein is still
100%.
better than what they were doing before, right?
For
Or not
sure.
having protein, regardless of how,
Yep.
what our scale weight
Yep.
shows.
And
So
it absolutely
still a
balances your
win.
blood sugar, particularly that first morning meal. It keeps your blood sugar more balanced throughout the day. Now, the other superstar, like you said, is fiber, right? And fiber gets a bad rap, you know, because we have influencers out there talking about, oh, don't eat that vegetable food or that vegetable food because of some small nutrient like phytic acid or lectins. Look, people, we need to eat a lot of plant food. We need to eat a lot of variety, and I would argue that we need to eat seasonally. Then you don't have to worry about any plant compound because it would change with the seasons.
Mm,
But the reality is fiber is the only thing so far that we've looked at in human clinical trials that reduces visceral fat in women, because exercise and caloric restriction do not. Full
mm,
stop. So
mm.
any gym bro that might be watching this needs to understand that telling middle-aged women to exercise more and just cut calories and it's going to work doesn't work, particularly with abdominal fat, because
Yes.
it lowers the inflammation, it feeds our microbiome, and our microbiome makes byproducts, so they eat it and then they make things that actually affect our metabolism.
I love
And so fiber, the more the better, but my goal is at least 35 grams a day spread
So
out.
you're even over the 25 to
Yeah.
30, which I can do that too, because you have to get yourself there. You have to
Yeah, you can't
go
do it
over time.
overnight.
Women
Yeah,
ask me, how many MenoWell bars can I eat a day? The chocolate has 8 grams of fiber in
yeah,
it. Like, let's do one. And then if you want to grow up slowly, because it's a lot of fiber,
yeah,
sister,
yeah. And if
but
there's, caveat to that, if somebody has bacterial overgrowth or other digestive problems, you got to fix that. But fixing that doesn't mean remove fiber for the rest of your
no,
life, because you'll
no.
kill the only good bacteria you've got.
Mm,
And they have a huge impact on how our body metabolizes estrogen, and our microbiome changes radically when we go through menopause.
right.
The type of bacteria changes, and the more you eat a healthy diet to feed them, the less impact we have with negative bacteria.
Right. Oh, I love that. I knew you were my person. Because also gut health and brain health go together.
Yep.
That's the other piece of that we're missing. We're just, even though we're talking about metabolism and, the inference about weight management, et cetera, but it's really important that we make sure we're taking care of and feeding our gut biome, because that speaks directly to our brain. I don't know
Well,
what
and,
your
and I'm
thoughts
going to
are.
go a little further than
Yeah.
that. I would say gut health is 100% body health. We
Mm,
will find, because we already know this to some degree, that the microbes in our gut absolutely control more of our body than any part of our body. Liver health, cardiovascular health, your hormone health, breast cancer risk, all that stuff. So much of it is very contingent on the health of your bacteria and the health of your gut.
mm.
And so if there's ever a place that everybody could double down, even if you have no symptoms whatsoever, is supporting and feeding the microbiome and taking care to have a healthy gut.
I love it. This is what I love about functional medicine practitioners, because
Yes.
you do that work, and fortunately you're not caught up in the whole medical system. So you get the 5 minutes with people. And I know in your wellness center, you guys spend time, and then this is so good. I really really appreciate the work that you've done. And also let's move this now in metabolic health into hormones, because I know you started Menrva with no E, Minrva,
Actually,
and
it's M E
oh,
N R V A.
Menerva. So there's one E in the front, not in the other side, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay,
It's the Etruscan spelling of Minerva. So
I love that. Excellent. That is that your background?
actually, No, I'm English and Irish mostly, a little bit of
God,
Scottish.
but it was
Although if
cool.
I go to Italy, everybody thinks I'm Italian. I think it's just the long. I think it's the big forehead and the long nose.
No, it's, I always say people claim you, wherever you
True.
are. Oh, you must be one of us.
Yeah,
I'm
you
fine
look
with
like one
that. So,
of us. Yeah, yeah,
um, just say, no, I'm just menopausal. That's what I am. Uh, all right. So, what I thought was very interesting that you offer for hormone replacement, that you are really big on testing. And so I know, a lot of doctors that we respect and love are really comfortable and confident when a woman says, I feel bad, then let's go, let's try. And she's in the zone, so let's try. And I'm bullish on that too. And I really appreciate your approach. So tell us tell us the panel that you, I'm guessing, require all of your patients to go through, and why you feel that's so important.
yeah. It's funny because I've had a lot of these conversations with doctors that are more conventionally trained and definitely functional medicine practitioners. So let me explain first and foremost. My dissertation was looking at how we metabolize our hormones and the impact in the gut. Right.
Mm,
So metabolized hormones mean how do they get wrapped up and taken care of in the liver and processed to go out to the trash, right? That's one of the major exit routes. I'm I am one of the world's experts on that arena,
mm,
in particularly the microbiome
mm,
interplay there. And so I had a unique opportunity to look at why some women have what I believe, this is my hypothesis, because what was driving my question is, why do women suffer autoimmune conditions 10 to 1 to men? Why 3 out of every 4 people that suffer from IBS are women? Why do we carry greater risk for dementia than men? And it's not just because we outlive them,
right.
right? There is some very significant mechanisms. And even if you just say, okay, hormones, yes or no, there's a significant outlier of women that are about 30% that still, they're the ones that have PCOS, PMDD, endometriosis, adenomyosis, fibroids, heavy periods, clotty periods, all those things. And they're also the ones, because functional medicine is unique in that a lot of people who seek it have done everything in conventional medicine and they aren't getting better or they get worse.
Mm,
So we happen to see what conventional medicine, someone told me last week, outliers. And I was like, well, that's 30 some odd percent of the population that are aware they have a problem,
mhm,
right?
mhm.
And so that's where I went in with this understanding. And a lot of what the research is sort of pointing to is some of it is unique about how our body processes these hormones and other things. Because the liver not only processes hormones in these pathways, but they process medications like antidepressants and pain medications and antibiotics and a bunch of other things. So you have other things that may displace or make those things worse or better. And so when I started looking at it, I was like, there's some very easy hallmarks that we can start looking at to see, number one, not only are the hormones that someone might be taking adequate, but are they too much or too little, or are they going in a direction that may not be as favorable as the
Yeah.
others? And so we do test. And so one of the first things we look at is we do an entire panel. So we look at all the sex hormones, all the thyroid hormones, all of the glucose and metabolic hormones, insulin, and how your body's producing it, inflammatory markers, liver function, kidney function. And we even look at things like growth hormone because they all play together. They're a symphony. And just because you're not obviously symptomatic doesn't mean there's not something going on there. And for instance, most doctors that work more conventionally, they'll go, oh, if you're having hot flashes and night sweats, we'll just give you hormones. And if they go away, thumbs up. I've never had a hot flash or a night sweat. I had 50 other symptoms, but I've never had either one of those.
Yeah.
And and I had unique, so you're always an N of one. I had unique hormone pathways that I'm not good at getting estrogen out, which
Mm,
kind of explains why my 40s were terrible,
mm,
right? Because I
mm,
had more at that time just because progesterone was already declining. So when we look at labs, even if somebody's menopausal, you can't ever create a roadmap if you don't know where you start.
mhm.
And you
Okay.
have to look for the left, right, left to get to the end. So we like looking at it in the beginning because we also know if somebody's got insulin resistance or glucose problems or metabolic syndrome, some of the things that are metabolic disease, they're gonna have a different hormone journey than somebody who doesn't. So we
Mm,
want to see all of that, and we use that as the baseline. And then our team, we have prescribers in every single state, and we also have our functional people wrapped around them. We prescribe, our team does, And then we do labs again to first look for efficacy, because we know it needs to get into kind of a sweet spot to protect the brain, the heart, the bones, but more is not better. Because there are companies out there that are like, oh, cycle it and get your period back at 65, 70. And I'm like, dude, that's the only positive thing about this whole
Like, are
experience
you
is getting rid of
kidding
that.
me? Only a
No,
male
no.
doctor would say that.
There,
Like, are you kidding?
I
No
mean, no,
thanks.
there are different protocols that do that, and I would disagree. Yes, that is how our body cycled before. The egg carton's empty. There's none left in there. We don't need to cycle again, and there's
The
nothing in the
store is
literature that says that.
closed. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
So I'm going to give an example. So we saw a patient with Minerva who had been put on hormones about 7, 8 years ago. She'd had a DEXA 10 years ago, and then was put on hormones, has been eating right, lifting weights, doing all the things you would expect for osteoporosis. And she had been on hormones and told that if she has hot flashes, night sweats, vaginal dryness, some of the kind of hallmarks, then she'd probably needed more, but if she didn't, she was fine. And she was like, I felt fine. So we did labs because we were checking in, and while we're waiting for labs, we do a DEXA, and her bone density had gotten significantly worse.
Mm.
Now, what every woman needs to know is if we go through menopause and we do not replace estrogen, we are all losing bone.
Mm-hmm.
The only difference is how much did you start with and how fast are you losing it,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the reality is we are all down that road. We have risk for osteoporosis, some of us more than others, right? If you're shorter, more petite, didn't weight lift, had like a hardcore vegan or vegetarian diet where you might have been low in protein, all of those things can contribute. So this woman, we look at it, and her DEXA had gotten significantly worse. And so they came to me, and I was like, that's weird because she's been on hormones, right? We look at it, and her estradiol level, which is the protective one, was 20. That's
And
not
it should be.
physiologically available. It's not
Mm.
enough. So she had been on 8 years of treatment with zero protective value. Now,
Mm.
did that protect her brain, her heart? We know it wasn't protecting her bones. So symptoms alone will leave a significant portion of people outside of that arena. On the other side of that, we have the variance in the population. What would be considered a normal dose for most women might exceed in other women. We absorb things differently. We metabolize it differently. And so it's always good to check, right? So that's why we use lab work to look. We're looking for efficacy and clinical relevance of values to make sure you're getting the right amount. Now, where we go further, and this is because we've been doing hormone metabolism, so how we get it through the liver for well over, it's probably closer to 18 years. Because this is the area that we're looking at for breast cancer, ovarian cancer, other risks. We actually test for how you package it and run it through the liver, because that is manipulatable with diet and supplementation. Like eat more cruciferous vegetables, eat more blueberries and raspberries, drink green tea, or add supplements that have those ingredients because they help you metabolize hormones. So we check all of those to make sure that we've got the right amount. And then once we've got kind of the sweet spot, we sort of keep it
Mm-hmm.
there. And my intent, I'm actually raising capital because we're going to build an entire technology platform that captures not only the symptoms, but the lab data, the treatment data, and the prescriptive data. Because when we start to have lots and lots of women in treatment, what we will actually see
Yeah.
is extraordinary patterns for all the other women's health issues that medicine just won't study. And it's
Mm-hmm.
going to be agnostic to pharma and agnostic to the medical system. And I don't care if they defund NIH because it'll be private and completely
Oh,
controlled.
shout out. Here we go. Right?
Yeah,
I
I'm like,
don't
I'm done.
care.
Again,
More
someone
than
goes,
one
what
path.
is it? I'm like, it's the 1,000 paper cuts. I'm done. I'm done playing in that arena. We're going to do it outside of the conventional system. We're going to build a really solid database and be able to use AI and other algorithms to actually be able to help women with real science
I
without
love
all
it.
that influence.
Betty Murphy, you're a badass. That's all I have to say. I knew it. Betty Murray, badass, and all the other initials. Okay, Betty, you did say one thing as we start to wrap up here that I want to touch on first, though. You're speaking about the liver a lot. And so HRT, replacement therapy, hormone therapy, mostly recommended via patch,
Yes.
transdermally through skin. I had this conversation with a girlfriend on Saturday who her doctor has her on the pill. And I said, well, it's kind of interesting because most doctors now are preferring patch transdermal versus orally because that passes through the liver.
Yes.
So you just keep saying liver, so you made me think about that. Any
Yeah.
comments you'd like to make?
Yeah, for decades, actually, since the 40s, hormone replacement, that was when Premarin came out. So since like late 40s, early 50s, we did oral, and it's made from horse pee, right? And it is actually, horses have 13 different estrogens. We only make three, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when
Mm-hmm.
you take it orally, it goes through what they call first pass liver metabolism. So oral goes all to the liver first, moves through those pathways. So depending on how you're wired genetically, you either do that well or you don't. And then it hits your bloodstream to go out and then kind of do its thing. Now we understand that bioidentical, which means if you think of your hormone as a key, it's like you took that key to Lowe's and got an exact replica. So when we do bioidentical, whether it's patch or cream or oil or whatever, it's actually same key, works on the lock regardless.
Mm-hmm.
Why give something that the liver has to process that has all these estrogens we don't make when we could give the exact replica? And the more recent research, particularly one that was a 10 million woman study looking at the long-term use of hormone replacement. So 10 million women's records looking at mortality, and this is women over 65,
I
right?
was
So
gonna
these are
say, what's
women.
the age group?
Yeah,
Right,
no, this
right,
is
okay.
amazing. So this pretty much sealed it for me. So
These are
10 million women.
postmenopausal women we're
Yep.
looking at now. Okay.
Yeah, significantly out of menopause, right? Average age of menopause is 51. So these women were a good 14, 15 years or more outside of it. And they were in three groups, 10 million records. Women who never did hormones, women who did hormones to get rid of the hot flashes for a couple years and stopped, women who started hormones and stayed on them, period. Now, what was cool about the group that did hormones and stayed on it, for the first time, we had a large population of oral synthetic progestins and Premarin, and topical estradiol and micronized permetrium and or synthetic non-synthetic progesterone,
Progesterone.
right? So for the first time, they were able to also compare those two. And what they saw is in all women on hormone replacement that stayed on it, every cause of mortality went down significantly. 32% dementia, 16% breast cancer, 11% lung cancer, 13% colorectal cancer, heart attack, stroke, all of it, right? And then if you look at osteoporosis, the numbers are insane because so 1 out of 2 women that are over 65 will have an osteoporotic break that will not regain their previous extra capacity. So,
That's a reason all by itself.
right.
The end. But
Right. And so here's the cool thing. What they showed was the women that were on the topical estrogen had no increased risk for heart attack, stroke, clot, or anything else, as long as it didn't go through first pass through the liver. So, because that was always the argument, well, maybe you should stop because you might have a clot risk as we get older. So if we're doing topical, there's no reason to stop. There's no concern of like liver first pass activity, and all the research is pointing to it actually reduces our risk of dying from all-cause mortality. And also, even more importantly, the average woman will live longer than a man, but we will spend 4.5 more years in poor health compared to a man.
mm,
So the reality is we live longer, but our health span is poorer. So
wow.
this is the arena that we can make the biggest difference.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I feel like we need 2 more conversations for
I
sure.
know, I know. I'm always like, what do you want to ask me about? Because I encyclopedic at this point.
I love it.
I've read 500
I
studies
love
in total
that.
about hormones and metabolism and all this stuff. So
I want you to send me that study. I want to look at that. And just the fact that I love that the fact that you had colitis is what took you down this path. And that's why I know you are a gut expert, because when we have our own struggles, that is the passion, right? The problem to the passion
yeah,
that we have, that we bring to things. And I love that so much. It's so authentic. You just took it to a
thank you.
whole nother level. I mean,
Thank you.
I didn't need I just stopped before my master's degree on nutrition. Certification works for me.
No,
So
that's
uh,
okay. Like I said, I like science, and I really went back for the PhD because people are like, why? I did that at 48. Like, well, people were like, why would you do that? And I knew in order to create Menrva, so Menrva is a telemedicine company, but the technology platform is ultimately what we're also building, because once we have it built and validated, we can have other organizations use it that are open enough to start looking at the science. Like I asked a very conventional physician and said, if you had the capacity for someone to give you the data in your face to help understand how to really treat people individually based on this, would you do it? And she said very haughtily, she said, well, we believe in evidence-based medicine. clinical control trials. I'm like, drug companies aren't going to do this because it proves that their drugs mess up these pathways. And I was like, and I said, sort of, kind of half cocked, I would say. I said, well, it's very easy to say that when you don't look for the evidence, right?
Mm.
We can't use not looking in science and medicine to say that it doesn't exist. Just because you doesn't look doesn't mean it's not happening. And so I knew that I needed to create that. And I was like, the only way I can is if I understand really complex research design, which is what I stuck my head into. I had to do statistics as my last
I was
class.
going to
That
say
was,
stats. And
oh, it was
that is what
brutal.
people
It was
don't
brutal. I did
understand
it.
because research and the statistics can be manipulated in any way
Oh, I can
we
make
choose them
anything
to.
look good or bad, just how I
Right?
write it.
So we
Right.
need to understand what is behind the statement, what is behind the study. And that's what got us into trouble this first time, right? So I love it. I'm so glad that we met.
Me
I
too.
hope I'm coming to Dallas the first week of May. I hope you're going to be at Let's Talk Menopause's
I am.
Menos. Okay, wonderful. Let's try to make some time to be together. Since I'm going to be in your
Absolutely. I
backyard.
am definitely going to attend that. And then, yes, I think I have to go straight from there and actually speak at an event in Austin the following day. But that's
And
okay.
that's
I'm
when
going to be
we
everywhere
met in
all at
Austin.
once.
I wish I could hop over there with you,
Yeah.
but this was so wonderful. Let's see. We've got a bunch of questions in here. You guys, we're almost at an hour, so we're just going to have Dr. Betty back on, and we're going
I
to
can
talk more about
absolutely come back.
all these
I love
things.
sharing information.
And so I guess someone said, Robin Fit for Yoga. Robin, DM me. I'll send you some codes. So thank you so much for being here.
Yes, thank you.
My last question. I bet you had some tips too. We were just going on and on and on.
Yeah.
Is there any, what's your power tip you want to leave us? And we'll end with that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would say your power tip, obviously we talked about protein and fiber. The other thing is think about eating vegetables and fruits in a rainbow of colors. If you eat a little bit of every color, what you're going to get is a wide variety of antioxidants that help induce pathways in the liver. So they make things run better. So don't eat the same food every day. We weren't designed to do that. And we just need to hit all colors all days. Like that's really, really important.
I'm so glad you said that. We have a clinical nutritionist on our team, Barb, and she says that. And I like to eat the same thing every day because I know I can hit my macros every
I
day,
know.
but that's not the best
Right.
way.
And we Instacart it and we're like, yeah, repeat. But that's not how our ancestor lived. Right. And
Okay.
so our body does better with variety. So it could be as simple as adding just, most of us do salads at least a little bit every week. And just think about, I want the accompanying vegetables to be a bunch of different colors because then I can have a bunch of variety without having to wholesale change our diet, right?
Right.
And have to rethink the wheel every day cooking.
That's the
I don't
thing.
do that. I'll tell you that. I don't do that. I don't have time for that.
Oh,
So
me either. Barb said herbs count too. That helps.
100%. Yeah, 100%. All the different herbs, whether it's paprika and clove
Yeah.
and tarragon, all of
All
those matter. Rosemary.
those everything's really good. All right, Dr. Betty Murray, give us
Yes.
where we can find you again. We're going to have you back on, but for sure, I know people are going to want to reach out and find you online. So where should they
Yes.
go to find
Yeah,
all
the
your
easiest
things?
thing is since we're on Instagram, you can follow me on Instagram at Dr. Betty Murray. You can also listen to my podcast. I have a podcast called Menopause Mastery, which we talk about this every week. And then you can also find me at bettymurray.com. That's probably the easiest way. And then you can get to my telemedicine company and everywhere else.
All the good
So,
things. Thank
yes.
you for your
Thank you.
curiosity and following. I used to say following the sugar cookies. I don't say that anymore.
Yeah.
Like following that little secret desire that makes you become the next person you were meant to be. So thanks for all you do.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
If I could say one last thing, I would say, and if you're listening to this and you feel that too, now's the time. Now's the time for us to step up, step out, and say something and do something. Yeah.
Mic drop.
Mic drop.
That's it. Thanks everybody for being
Thank
here.
you.
Thank you, Betty. To be continued. Everybody, MenoWell. Bye-bye.
Bye.